Some monsters don't hide under the bed. They walk among us, smiling, helpful, invisible. On a warm southern night in 1999, two teenage girls, best friends bound by cheerleading routines, high school dreams, and the last sparkle of summer freedom, vanished into the stillness of rural Alabama. Their names were J.B. Beasley and Tracie Hawlett, and their story should have been about college plans and birthday parties. Instead, it became the ghost of a question that would haunt an entire community for decades. How can someone kill so coldly, so carefully, and never be caught? What happened that night in Ozark, Alabama, wasn't just a murder. It was a riddle wrapped in silence. There was no forced entry, no robbery, no known enemies, no clear motive. And yet, by the next morning, the girls were gone, found executed and placed like shadows in the trunk of a car. And the killer? Vanished. Like mist. This case isn't just about tragedy. It's about the black hole that forms when justice is swallowed whole, when evidence leads nowhere, when DNA whispers truths we still can't hear, when the lines between innocent passerby and sadistic predator blur into the fog of a southern summer night. In this video, we're going to peel back the layers of a crime that remains unsolved not because there weren't clues, but because the killer moved like a ghost. We'll explore the unsettling psychology of such calculated evil. We'll walk with investigators through every false lead, every gut-punch dead end. We'll step into minds of victims who never imagined their lives would end in terror. And we'll ask the question that rattles bones and breaks sleep. What if the killer was never caught because they were never truly suspected? This is not just a story. It's a wound, one that never closed. Welcome to Crime Conclave YouTube channel. This is why the serial killer was never caught. To understand how a killer could slip through the cracks so cleanly, leaving behind fingerprints, DNA, and a town's collective grief, we need to go back, not just to July 31st, 1999, but further. Because this isn't the first time evil wore a familiar face, nor the first time a quiet town watched horror bloom under its nose. Ozark, Alabama, a place wrapped in red clay roads and southern charm, where everyone knows everyone, or thinks they do. In places like this, evil doesn't arrive with flashing lights. It tiptoes in wearing work boots, greets you at the diner, waves politely at church. That's the first great illusion. Monsters look like men. Throughout history, the most elusive killers have thrived in obscurity. Jack the Ripper slipped through gaslit alleys with surgical precision in 1888. The Zodiac taunted the world with encrypted madness from the shadows of California in the 1960s. And here, in this quiet corner of the South, someone perhaps beloved or respected, committed a crime so calculated, so methodical, it was as if they rehearsed it in nightmares. You see, the deeper you dig into cases like this, the more a chilling pattern emerges. These aren't just acts of violence. They're performances meticulously staged, with the killer as both director and phantom. There's no chaos, no frantic sloppiness, just intention and silence. From a journalistic lens, the Beasley Hawlett case is a haunting study in failed justice. There were leads, yes, witnesses, surveillance timelines, a palm print, semen, but nothing led anywhere. It was as though the crime existed in a vacuum, a moment stolen from reality and sealed shut by hands that knew exactly what they were doing. Philosophically, we must confront an unsettling truth. There exists a kind of evil that is not impulsive, but patient. Not born of rage, but of control. This killer didn't lash out. They orchestrated. They left the girls' belongings untouched, their clothes mostly in place. There was no ransom, no public message, no theatrics, just a quiet erasure. And that's why this case isn't just a local tragedy. It's a mirror held up to society's blind spot. We want to believe that killers are broken, visibly so, that they live on the fringes. But what if they don't? What if they blend in better than we do? There's a term in ancient philosophy, apate, Greek for deceit or the goddess of fraud. In the oldest myths, apate could charm anyone, hiding truth beneath layers of beauty and calm. That's what happened here. The crime didn't scream, it whispered. And while we look for someone with a record, someone suspicious, apate smiled politely and held the door. Journalists who followed this case over the years, dogged, intuitive, desperate to find closure, often speak not of clues but of shadows. Evidence seemed to contradict itself. Witnesses recalled things only to forget them later. Some locals whispered about cover-ups. Others feared it was someone tied to law enforcement, or worse, someone the victims might have trusted. But speculation became smoke, and smoke is hard to hold. This case reminds us that not all killers crave the spotlight. Some crave the absence of evidence, the thrill of never being named. And perhaps the cruelest twist of all? He didn't vanish because he ran fast. He vanished because no one knew they were supposed to chase him. Saturday, July 31st, 1999. It was supposed to be a night of celebration. J.B. Beasley had just turned 17. She and her close friend Tracie Hawlett, also 17, were inseparable. Two girls navigating the familiar teenage rhythm of small-town Alabama. That evening, they attended a party in Headland, about 15 miles from their homes in Dothan. By all accounts, the girls didn't stay long. Some said they seemed uncomfortable or out of place. At around 10 p.m., they left, planning to head back to Dothan. But they never made it. That night, something happened that shifted the course of two families' lives and left the town paralyzed by confusion. The final hours. After leaving the party, the girls reportedly got lost. It was late, dark, and GPS wasn't yet standard. Cell phones were still primitive. They pulled into a BP gas station in Ozark, a quiet, seemingly safe place, where they asked for directions back to Dothan. That was at 10:55 p.m. Sometime after 11 p.m., Tracie called her mother from a payphone, saying they were headed home. She didn't sound worried. There was no hint of fear. It should have been a typical night of teen misadventure, but it wasn't. By the next morning, the girls were missing, and by that afternoon they were found. The discovery. On August 1st, 1999, police discovered JB's 1993 black Mazda abandoned on Herring Avenue, a gravel road nestled in a residential part of Ozark. The car was locked, keys in the ignition, driver's license, and purse on the seat. Both girls were inside the trunk. Each had been shot once in the head with a small caliber handgun. No signs of struggle. No defensive wounds. The crime was silent, surgical. Strangely, there was no sexual assault, though semen was found on J.B. Beasley's body. Her jeans were stained but not removed. Her clothing was otherwise intact. This created immediate confusion. Was this a sexually motivated crime or something else entirely? And then there was the palm print. Police recovered a single palm print from the trunk. A perfect match, they believed, for the killer. They ran it through databases. Nothing. They waited for someone to crack. No one did. The Ozark police, joined by the Alabama Bureau of Investigation and later the FBI, conducted hundreds of interviews. They followed tips across multiple states. They interrogated local sex offenders, ex-cons, drifters, even people connected to the police. But no arrest came. This wasn't for lack of trying. The case gained attention quickly, especially in Alabama. It was covered by America's Most Wanted, and true crime forums debated it endlessly. Theories bloomed like wildflowers. Was it a random act by a drifter? A botched carjacking? A local with a secret? Someone who knew them or at least knew how to disappear? There was talk of inconsistencies. Witnesses seeing a third person, timelines that didn't quite align, possible contamination of evidence. Some even suggested the girls had been followed for a while. But none of it led anywhere solid. The physical evidence, the semen, the palm print, should have broken the case wide open. Instead, it sat dormant until 2019. In a shocking development nearly 2 decades later, investigators used genetic genealogy, the same technique that caught the Golden State Killer, to trace DNA evidence from a crime scene. The results led to a name. Coley McCraney, a local man, former high school athlete, no prior violent criminal record, married, father, churchgoer, someone who on the surface looked nothing like a killer. He was arrested in March 2019, 20 years after the murders. DNA from the scene matched his profile. Authorities celebrated. Justice at last. But for many who had followed the case for years, the arrest raised as many questions as it answered, because the evidence that put McCraney in jail was the same evidence that had existed since day one. So why did it take 20 years? And more disturbingly, was he truly the killer, or just someone whose DNA happened to be in the wrong place? March 2019. The news broke like a thunderclap. After nearly 20 years, authorities had made an arrest in the murders of J.B. Beasley and Tracie Hawlett. The name was unfamiliar to most. Not a long-time suspect. Not someone repeatedly questioned. Coley McCraney, 45 years old. He was a former high school athlete, a father, a husband. He'd lived in Ozark most of his life, just a few miles from where the girls were found. So why hadn't he come up before? The answer lies in the revolution of forensic science. Back in 1999, DNA testing was limited. You needed a direct match to someone in the system, usually someone already convicted of a crime. McCraney had no violent criminal record. Fast forward to 2019, when genetic genealogy came into play. Investigators uploaded the DNA from the semen found on J.B. Beasley's body to GeneMatch, a public genealogy site where people share DNA to trace their ancestry. From there, they built a family tree, slowly narrowing down the field. Eventually, all roads led to McCraney. They secretly collected a DNA sample, some say from a discarded item, like a straw or cup, and ran the test. The results were conclusive. His DNA matched the semen from the crime scene. They also claimed his palm print matched the one found on the trunk. Case closed? Not quite. When confronted, McCraney didn't run. He didn't lawyer up immediately. In a taped interview, he gave a version of events that stunned many. He said he knew J.B. Beasley. He said she came to his house that night, and he said they had consensual sex. But here's where it gets murky. He claimed he didn't know Tracie Hawlett, said he didn't kill either of them. He suggested someone else must have murdered the girls after he saw J.B. This explanation, delivered 2 decades later, threw gasoline on an already burning fire of public suspicion. Was he lying to cover up a rape and murder? Or was he telling the truth, unknowingly placing himself at the scene of a crime he didn't commit? In April 2023, the trial began. For years after his arrest, McCraney stood before a jury in Dale County. The prosecution painted a chilling picture. He picked the girls up, killed them both execution style, left their bodies in the trunk of JB's car. The motive? Never made entirely clear. The defense, meanwhile, hammered on the timeline and the gaping holes in the investigation. No eyewitnesses ever placed McCraney with the girls that night. No video footage. No murder weapon ever recovered. No conclusive forensic evidence tying him to Tracie Hawlett. Most shocking, his DNA was only found on JB, not on Tracie, not on the car's interior, and not on anything else. So if he was the killer, how did he manage such a clean crime, yet leave behind semen? Some supporters of McCraney argue the timeline makes no sense. The girls were last seen around 11 p.m. Their bodies were discovered late the next afternoon. Could he really have committed a double homicide and then gone on with his life undetected for decades? Even more concerning is the role of the police. Back in 1999, investigators reportedly had McCraney's name on a list of people who lived near where the bodies were found. But no one interviewed him. His palm print and DNA were collected only after the genealogy match. Did the investigators make mistakes? Or were they blind to someone hiding in plain sight? And what about the palm print? For years, it had no match. When it suddenly lined up with McCraney's print, some began asking, why now? Was it overlooked before or tampered with? The verdict, despite the reasonable doubts, in April 2023, Coley McCraney was found guilty of 5 counts, 2 murders, 2 kidnappings, and 1 rape. He was sentenced to life without parole. But even with the verdict, the community remains divided. For some, McCraney is a predator who finally got what he deserved. For others, he's the wrong man, caught by science, convicted by narrative, and betrayed by a system that needed closure. At first glance, the J.B. Beasley and Tracie Hawlett case appears resolved. A killer caught, a trial held, justice served. But the closer you look, the more uncertain everything becomes. What if McCraney is telling the truth? What if, on the night of July 31st, 1999, he did a consensual sex with J.B. Beasley, an act of teenage rebellion or experimentation, and then she left his house alive? What if, sometime between then and the moment the car was found, someone else came into the picture? Someone angry, someone jealous, someone capable of murder. It would explain why his DNA was found only on one girl, why there was no physical evidence connecting him to Tracie, why his story, as odd as it was, never changed, even when it would have been easier to stay silent. But there's another side to the coin. What if he's lying? What if the consensual claim was a last-ditch effort to explain away evidence that couldn't be denied? What if he used charm or manipulation to get the girls to trust him, and when things spiral, he covered it all up with calculated precision? The conviction didn't answer everything. In fact, it raised new questions. Why was McCraney never questioned back in 1999, despite living minutes away from the crime scene? How did his palm print, collected years later, suddenly match a decades-old piece of evidence? Why has the murder weapon never been found? Why did the car sit untouched for 15 hours in a populated area without being discovered? And if the motive was sexual violence or rage, why was only one girl assaulted? Then there's the matter of the phone call. Tracie's mom received a call around 11:30 p.m. that night. A young girl's voice said, "We're in Ozark. We're lost." The call was brief, the voice calm, not distressed. Was it a red herring or a sign they were still looking for help? Still alive? And why didn't that help ever come? This case isn't just about guilt or innocence. It's about the stories we tell to make sense of evil and the uncomfortable truth that sometimes we don't get clear answers. It's about the limitations of science. DNA can tell us who, but not how, not why, and certainly not what happened next. It's about the fragility of memory. 20 years passed before the arrest. Witnesses forgot, records vanished, timelines blurred. And it's about confirmation bias. Once McCraney's name was linked to the DNA, the case was shaped to fit the narrative. From that moment on, everything he said, did, or didn't do was interpreted through the lens of presumed guilt. We want resolution. We want someone to blame. But in that rush, we risk stepping over the parts of the story that don't fit. Imagine the scene again. A dusty car, a cracked windshield, two girls side by side in the trunk, hair matted, faces still, innocence lost, literally and symbolically. And outside that trunk, an entire town frozen in time, for years, unable to move forward until someone, anyone, was held accountable. McCraney is behind bars, but for many, peace still hasn't come. Because this isn't just a story about two murdered girls. It's a story about how justice is pursued and what we're willing to overlook in the name of closure. The question that haunts this case isn't just who did it. It's, are we sure?